Hello, I'm Daniele Giardini, known as Demigiant. I make games with other people, sometimes with myself. I do various things. I code, I draw, I design, I write. I worked on as a freelance on Nightcall, a French game very nice about a taxi. I drew instead this recent football drama, which is a narrative game about football. And I worked with other Italian friends and the Ghost Shark and La Boîte, and then an American friend who made the music Abstraction on Still There, who is a game that just came out, which I wrote. Games have always been a passion, but more the playing than the making them. But then I started working a lot of years ago for museums and to do interactive stuff. And on the side, as a hobby, I was making small games with Flash. Then I had one day with a friend, Paul Harden, we had to make an actual 3D exhibition of the Kircher Museum. And so we had to do it with Unity. And by discovering Unity, my passion for making games increased a lot. Plus, on the same time, I met my lady, Jelena, in Serbia, and so I decided to kind of change my life, tell my Italian clients to go screw themselves, more or less, and concentrated more on video games, while still taking freelance, but a different kind of freelancing. First of all, I started making a lot of small experiments, like games in 1, 2, 3 days, and then I focused at a certain point on Ghoskari, who was a game with a spaceship that you can infinite run. I have this tendency, I like to work alone because I'm hermetical, but then I also like to work with friends, so my roles are often different. For example, in one case, on Nightcall I made the coding for the tools, on Still There I wrote it, on a football drama I drew it, so I see it from different aspects. We have very few money, because there's the main problem is that, because to be a game developer you need to invest a lot of time, and so money is important to be able to survive in the meantime. And while Europe is trying to help game developers, Italy in theory has them, but since we have one of the most horrible bureaucracies in Europe, and not just in Europe, we're just not accepting the help that Europe is giving us, because we don't want to do the bureaucracy, and I'm talking state-wise. So this should change soon, but right now you have to put your own funds often, or you have to directly grab some European funds. Your government is not helping you. So managing to get out, to be known somehow, which is one of the most important steps in indie gaming, because discovery is very complicated. On the other side, we have a really flourishing indie scene. So there's a lot of very innovative, very creative games. Games are kind of the sum of all of these passions that I have, because what really complicated my life was when I was just, I knew that I loved to write and draw comics, and that was kind of easy. Okay, you know, you have that sector, and so maybe you do something else to survive, but you have that passion. But then when I discovered that I also loved coding, I have a real passion for coding, those are very different mental states. Actually, I'm a different person when I code than when I draw. Games, they manage to combine it all. So one side that is coding that is very precise also, it's a very logic side for a person, and the other that is completely crazy and completely creative, even if coding is creative too. I'm like, for example, when I draw or when I write, I'm much more of an outward person. I want to go outside, I'm less of a hermit. When I code and I get all in my mind, then I become completely hermetical. there's a lot of people that say that our true self is never shown, while instead our true self is just a combination of all these sides of us, because we are always ourselves. There's nothing we can do. Even if we're acting, that's who we are. We're someone who are acting in that moment. Davide came to us actually one day and he said, oh, why don't we make a small narrative game? Point and click part was Davide, because he's a big adventure fan, a big Secret of Monkey Island fan. Gaetano on his side, the artist, he wanted to paint stuff, he added a lot of things to all the scenes, etc. And every one of us wanted to say something. We had lots of fights, lots, but so it was complicated. But in a way, we had different roles. Like Davide, he was the lead programmer, the lead developer, and the main coder, and he did the puzzle design. So he had the final words on puzzles. I had the final words on writing and on the narrative. And Gaetano had the final word on the art. I have to say there's a lot of talks about everybody should be equal in video games and allowed to choose to have a vote on everything, which is completely right. I absolutely agree. But also you have to know, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, you have to know who's really responsible for that side of the game, because when there's too many people that have different ideas, you need someone to say, I'm choosing to do this, because it helps a lot. I know grief very well, because I'm an adult, and the more you grow old, the more you deal with grief. And I started relatively young, so it's something that I felt very familiar with, so much that I could play with it both in a serious way and in a humorous way. And it's something that is not usually talked about in video games, not seriously. And I believe that stories they want to be told, which is super pretentious to say, but they just happen to you. So that was what wanted to be told. And there's one thing that actually my Jelena, my lady, repeats to me every time, that in narrative, if you reach the end of the narrative and the characters have not changed, then nothing really happened, even if there were events. And so even Gorky has an evolution. No, I'm not taking a break. Actually, after finishing Still There, you know that there's a lot of talks about crunch in video games. And crunch is not just imposed by a company, but when you're an indie, you impose it on yourself because you have to work a lot. And we crunched a lot, especially Davide and me, in the last months of the development of Still There. So when we finished it, the problem after crunch is that you get fucking depressed. Plus you finish the game, so there's so many reasons to get depressed that I actually couldn't wait to work on something else. I have a vision for the next game which I started developing, but I'm still unsure on what it will be. Like, I know the story I want to tell, but I wanted to do a very small game just to get out again. Sometimes there's debate that come out, like, are video games art? I would say obviously, but they still have to be recognized because it's a very recent media. You know, like comics, they had a lot of problems to be recognized as art, but they're much older than games, so they got to it. They had their Alan Moore, they had their Andrea Pazienza, their Moebius. We are starting to have those kind of people, but we still have to be recognized as a true culture form. I don't think that games are art because they teach empathy, so that's very important. I think games are art for other reasons. But it's true that like, for example, we had books, let's start, novels, the most ancient media, one of the most ancient media in history. They can teach you a lot of empathy too, if you read them, because it depends on what types of books you read. But it's all based on your own creativity, so in a way it forces you to be hermetic, because you're experiencing it by creating what's behind the words yourself. Movies, they already try to force your hand and put you in the right direction. The right direction just meaning what the author wanted to say. I think that games are a mix of these different medias, because they ask you to use a lot of creativity to get involved into it, because you're an actual participant, and just by participating in it, you have to use the assumption that you can put yourself inside the game, and that if they work on empathy, it's very important. So I would love that. I think they also should work on being more mature. I'm not saying that they're immature, but what I'm saying is, like in comics or in movies, you have the Spider-Man and the Avengers movie, which are great. I like them, I have fun with them, but then you have the Tarkovsky, you have some different kinds of movies, and games should have that too, which for now they have, but it's only the indie scene. From a personal perspective, what I would really like is to be able to reach that point where you can express yourself completely. I believe that the most important step is to know yourself and know how you can express yourself in anything that you do, because that's also one step that lets you understand others. If you, I didn't do it to reach this phrase, I swear, but it fits now. At the end of Still There is this phrase that I love, that is from Hillel, and that says, "If thou art not for thyself, who will be for thee? But if thou art for thyself alone, wherefore art thou?"